Pre-show activities from 6 until 7, and then I will announce. I'll be talking a little bit about the behind-the-scenes stories. I'll tell a little bit of trivia on stage, and then announce the show.
Okay.
At 7.
All right, so that's all. People can get tickets to that where?
At the Orpheum Theater.
At the Orpheum Theater.
Right.
And so just check out the Orpheum and the
Memphis, Tennessee.
Memphis, Tennessee. We'll check that out. And Saturday right here in Jackson, Tennessee at Southern Magnolia. Terry Lynn Crane is with us. We'll talk to her next. This is the Primetime Drive at News Talk 101.5 FM. We're back on the Primetime Drive News Talk 101.5 FM. What a gorgeous day. 82 in our city right now. And it's August. Business After Hours is Thursday. It will be at the Lift from 5 until 7 with the Chamber. So keep that in mind. That's on your Jackson State Community College community calendar here at News Talk Radio. Terry Lynn Crane is with us. We're talking about being star time. Terry has been many things in her life. She is from Memphis, Tennessee, is now a published author, but she, like I said, she's done radio and a bunch of other things. And so she will be at Southern Magnolia at the gift shop this coming Saturday from 10 until 2:30 to sign copies of Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. Terry was one time in her life married to Fred Crane, the last 10 years of his life. And his role in Gone with the Wind, he's the first one that we hear speak in Gone with the Wind.
Exactly. His cast name was Brent Tarleton.
Okay.
He was one of the Tarleton twins. Right.
The boys there. Okay. He had only been in L.A. for about a year.
Less than that. Actually, just a few
And his
months.
mother sent him out there during the Depression.
Sure did. And she had heard that a lot of people were making a lot of money out in Hollywood getting into the movies.
Okay,
so she thought since her
Depression
son
was on and all that.
Yeah, her son was a hopeless mimic. So she said her irises turned into dollar signs, and she took $50 out of her husband's pocket and bought him some clothes she thought would really be in out in Hollywood.
Put him on the train.
Got him a one-way ticket on the Sunset Limited. And so he was on his way. And he was, of course, he didn't know how to get in the movies. He just knew that he wasn't under the domineering thumb of his mother anymore. So he was footloose and fancy-free, you know.
LA.
So he took off,
But he didn't audition for this movie.
Well,
he didn't go to a casting
He didn't
call
actually, no. In fact, he was out there doing some odd jobs and really kind of doing hard labor. And he got homesick and got in touch with an aunt out there, Aunt Mamie, he called her. And her daughter was the silent film actress, Leatrice Joy. Okay. And she had been married to another actor, John Gilbert. Okay. So anyway, she had gotten her limousine and she was heading out to have her daughter, little Leatrice Joy, audition for the part of Sue Ellen O'Hara, which, of course, Evelyn Keyes got that role. And so Fred was there at her mom's house, Aunt Mamie's house, and he was laughing and having a good time with her, reading the Bible to her because she was blind.
Okay.
So he had quite a great relationship with her. And so she said, well, Fred, you look like a nice, reared young man. Have you ever been to a movie studio? He said, no, ma'am. He says, well, come on with us to Selznick Studio. Of course, he didn't know Selznick, Smelznick. He didn't know who that was, you know. So they piled into the limousine and off to Selznick Studio they went. So after, of course, after all the hugging and oh, darling this and oh, darling that and stuff that, while he's waiting there watching them do all the hugging, he was looking at these facades. Of course, all of the movie Gone with the Wind was actually filmed right there on the movie lot, except for one scene, which was the barbecue scene, which was done at Busch Gardens. But anyway, he would open up the door like to Tara, open up and then walk in, and then it's held up by 2x4s, you know. And so he was just amazed how it all looked in the real life, you know. So some gentleman by the name,
they were already at work on the movie. The movie was already in production.
Well, they had, of course,
some
started.
Scenes of it,
yes, they had started with the scene, which was the burning of the Atlanta Depot scene. And actually, Clark Gable was not who you see in there at first. He had not come on the set yet, and they had a stand-in do that part because it was kind of a long shot. And then, of course, Vivien Leigh had not been cast yet either. Yeah. Wow. And there's another story behind that. But anyway, there was a stand-in, and at one time, Fred's ex-wife, of course, at the time, he had not met her, but she was a stand-in for Vivien Leigh.
Okay.
So this is kind of, it really
all in the family here.
There's a lot.
So he's on this set. He's looking around. Then
yes, and
how does he audition?
There was a
or
gentleman.
He doesn't audition.
Actually, no, not really.
We're talking to Terry Lynn Crane, who was married to Fred Crane, who was in Gone with the Wind, as one of the
Tarleton
brothers,
twins,
the
right?
Twins, right?
And he, a gentleman by the name of Charles Richards, heard his accent, and he said, "Boy,
New Orleans guy."
Yeah, he says, "Have you ever done any theater?" He said, "Yes, sir." He started telling me he was in the La Petite Theater, and then he did some theater in college and stuff like that. And so he said, "Here, read this." So he had the script to the opening scene, and well, Fred read it, threw away the scene. The guy smiled, takes him by the hand over to George Cukor, who was the director at the time, and George Cukor gave him the script. And said, "Read this." And now Fred didn't know he was auditioning.
Okay.
He said if he'd known, his legs would have probably turned to jello.
Okay.
Jello is what he used to say, But so he read it, threw away the lines again, and he was very natural in his delivery. George Cukor smiled, took him by the hand up to Selznick's office.
So he goes right to the top.
Goes right to the top.
To David O. Selznick. Everybody else on the street's trying to fight to get in. Right, yes. Fighting to get in.
Fighting to get in, and he didn't even know he was auditioning. Didn't even know Selznick. Okay. Never heard of him before. Never heard of Gone with the Wind. Never read the book.
Okay.
So here he is.
So he's taken to David Selznick's office.
Yes.
And who's in there?
Well, he looks to the right, and there's a sofa with a beautiful woman who he later found out was Vivien Leigh. And she was negotiating with David Selznick about how much money she would take as salary for Gone with the Wind. So, of course, now he was a 20-year-old man, a young man, he probably blushed seeing the beauty. He'd never been with a woman, so he was like a young boy, really. Yeah. And so he sat down on the sofa with her, and Selznick took a couple of scripts, handed one to Vivien, one to Fred.
So he reads with Vivien Leigh right there in front of David Selznick. Right
there. They'd never read before together, nothing. But it was very natural. It was just like they'd been doing it for a long, long time. David Selznick smiled. He motioned over to Marcella Rabwin, who was his assistant, and said, "Bring me a stock contract." And so Fred said he signed for more money than he thought was in the world at that time. It was like $50 a week or something like that. This was, of course, 1939.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, that's how it started. And originally, he was cast actually as both Tarleton twins. They had been looking for a long time for twins and couldn't find any that really met the qualification for it. He didn't have red hair. They dyed it red. Okay. But he was a good-looking guy. He had the accent, and he had a good delivery. So they thought, well, this will do a process shot.
He gets his part. Then there will be another story with one of the other of the brothers coming up. Terry Lynn Crane is with us. Her book is called Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. It's not just recipes. It's a lot more stories. As you're hearing, behind the scenes of Gone with the Wind, and a lot more. She'll sign copies of this coming Saturday at Southern Magnolia in the Casey Jones Village from 10 until 2:30. You'll want to meet her. We're going to continue this conversation. This is the Primetime Drive at News Talk 101.5 FM. Back on the Primetime Drive, News Talk 101.5 FM. We're talking with Terry Lynn Crane, author of the book Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. Terry's going to be with us through the afternoon. We'll talk to her again starting at the 4 o'clock hour. But one thing I wanted people to know, so your Fred Crane became your husband, and you his wife the last 10 years of his life. He didn't audition for this. He didn't know who Vivian Leigh was.
Didn't know
So
Gone
he's-
with the Wind, what Gone with the Wind was.
So he's reading with Vivian Leigh, has no
Yes.
idea he's even being auditioned, and he gets this contract.
Right.
So he becomes one half of the Charlton twins. They wanted, or were considering having him play both roles.
That's how he was originally hired as
And
both.
then somebody else enters this picture.
Right. Well, they were going to do the process shot, of course, and that would have limited the movement in the scene. So about 2 weeks later, who comes on the scene but, well, you know him by The Adventures of Superman. George Reeves.
George Reeves.
And so George was the same height, same weight, looked enough like him to pull it off. And they, of course, they're the Charlton twins, but they referred to them as the Charlton boys, in the movie.
Now, how did they decide who spoke what in this when they had this thing scripted out?
Fred was the one to speak first, and that was the line of Brent Tarleton.
He opens Gone with the
He
Wind.
opens the whole movie, and he sets in fact, he's the one that sets the fixation of Scarlett on Ashley Wilkes, because he's the one that spills the beans that that Ashley is going to marry his cousin, Right. So that's how it all starts. So Fred got it all started, but he started with the line, "So what if we were expelled from college, Miss Scarlett? The war's going to start any day now. We'd left college anyhow." And that was his opening line. But how funny it was is that I guess no one, and in fact, if you read the book White Columns Over Hollywood by Sue Myrick, she talks about the twins, the Charlton twins, and how no one could tell them apart. So they didn't try to tell them apart. They just knew that they were the Tarleton twins. So whoever did the credits really made a boo-boo, because and here it is 75 years later, and they still haven't changed it on the film.
Well, I guess you can. You can mess with the classic, right?
Yeah, he's supposed to be the top person.
Since he speaks first.
Yes,
he's supposed to
it should say Fred Crane, Brent Tarleton, but instead it says George Reeves, Brent Tarleton. Wow. But if you listen to the dialogue in the opening scene, George, who is Stuart, says to Vivian Leigh, who's Scarlett, "You are going to dance with the Scarlett, first Brent, then me, then Brent, then me." So there you have it.
So the credits have it wrong.
They have it wrong, but the premiere program was correct. Had him billed correct at the top, everything. So if you some of the collectors will have some of those old programs from the Atlanta premiere.
For this moment in her life, Terry Lynn Crane has written Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. Some of these recipes are based on recipes of the 1800s and go all the way through this. Not all are. And then they're behind-the-scenes stories about the different people that are part of Gone with the Wind. She got rights from Gone with the Wind.
Partners.
The partners.
And
to do
Warner
this.
Brothers.
And Warner Brothers to do all of this.
Took 2 years.
And there are some other amazing stories. It didn't just happen. It happened, but it didn't just happen. And we're going to find out about that. Terry's going to stay with us. She'll be at Southern Magnolia Gift Shop in the Casey Jones Village this coming Saturday from 10 a.m. till 2:30. She will be at the Orpheum Friday evening as a part of their showing of Gone with the Wind to tell some of the behind-the-scenes things and to do book signing there as well.
Right, I'll be there about 6 p.m.
Okay, so all of that is happening this weekend. We're delighted to have her with us. Star Time at News Talk 101.5 with Terry Lynn Crane. We'll continue this conversation in the 4 o'clock hour, so stay with us. We'll be checking in with the Talk Radio News Service out of Washington, D.C., coming up right after the AP News and Keith Shirley's local news update. This is the Primetime Drive at Jackson's News Talk 101.5
FM.
We continue our conversation with Terry Lynn Crane on the Primetime Drive here at News Talk 101.5 FM. She's the author of Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. Terry's been a songwriter. She was Shirley Dimple.
Oh, my goodness.
On WMPS with Rick Dees and Rod Olson, all those guys years ago. Not that she was a very small child, young child.
I'm only 29 and holding.
Did that entire show in character because she was that character. Took that to the Gong Show.
Took it to the Gong Show.
Got on the
stopped
Gong.
by the police when I was dressed like Shirley Dimple.
But got you out of a ticket and got you a police escort to the Gong Show.
Sure did.
But if you were going to get gonged, you got gonged by Bob Eubanks. If you're going to get gonged by somebody, that's pretty
Newlywed
good.
Game,
Right from the Newlywed Game. He also promoted the Beatles at the Hollywood Bowl and then brought Years ago, the tour with the Merle Haggard came through with the Osborne brothers, and he was the booker and producer for those shows.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
so he
Merle
was
Haggard,
a,
and
he
he's
was,
from
yeah,
Bakersfield.
Bakersfield, yeah. So
Yeah, I
they
used to live
linked
out
up.
there.
Yeah, they linked up with them, and Bob Eubanks was right here at the Jackson Coliseum.
Awesome.
To introduce them because
Nice
he was
guy.
working
Very
that.
nice
So,
guy.
so if you're going to be gonged by somebody,
Yeah.
that's a pretty person to be gonged by.
And it was just the last note. I'd already finished the whole thing, and
Thought
then
it-
I
thought you'd
just
made
turned
it.
around, showed my little fancy pants, and
Gong.
That was
Right
the
there.
end of that.
Terry Lynn Crane was married to Fred Crane, who was one of the Tarleton twins in the Gone with the Wind. And he, last hour we talked about this, and just to do a quick recap. He was sent by his mother from New Orleans during the Depression to go to Hollywood to try to, maybe get into movies or whatever, which he did by accident. Had no idea he was auditioning. It was a friend that took him, and he didn't know David Selznick. But he walks in, and suddenly he's reading with
Vivian Leigh?
Vivian Leigh, doesn't know who she is.
No, had no idea.
But anyway, he winds up in this movie. George Reeves, who became Superman on television,
Right.
became the other of the twins. But at first, they were just going to use Fred in both roles.
Exactly.
But then added George Reeves because it matched extension. And this movie is already in production, and they're filling these roles as they go.
Yeah.
And so it's happening. What did that mean in his life and career then when he made that movie? I mean, because it becomes obviously an identity. He did other things. He was on radio, you say, in Los Angeles for many years.
broadcaster, but he was more famous as a broadcaster in Los Angeles, classical music, and of course Ava Gardner and a lot of those big stars would call him up and flirt with him and ask him to come over for breakfast and stuff like that. But but anyway, he of course did the Gone with the Wind thing, and then that was his first movie. But he did of course Cisco Kid, and then he did a lot of television as well, and a lot of westerns, and just had a great time. He was on General Hospital for a while, and just different things. Yeah, so he was had a good time.
Terry much later in his life met him in Memphis, and they married. And there's a fascinating story there. We don't have time to get into all that because I want to get into this book. But after you and you say it was the 50th anniversary of Gone with the Wind that really brought him back into a lot of this.
And that was 1989. And, of course, Ted Turner, who owned the rights at the time, brought all of the most of the surviving cast members to Atlanta for the 50th anniversary, and Fred was one of them. So
that kind of got him back in that thing.
That boosted him, and boy, then it started popping. He did a lot of personal appearances, cruises, speeches, and he had the entire collection of Fred Parrish, who was the still photographer from Gone with the Wind, and so he would show these.
So he had all these behind-the-scenes photos.
Oh, yes. In fact, I have them now, and I use them when I'm speaking at various events, and I go all over the country and talk about behind the scenes of Gone with the Wind and sign my book.
When you and Fred married, you bought a house south of Atlanta.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a house.
It was
a home. It was 1832. No, excuse me, 1849 when it was built. But it was a Confederate headquarters and a hospital during the war between the states. So it was on the National Register of Historic Places.
So you bought that and then turned this into a bed and breakfast?
And a Gone with the Wind museum.
Because
We had over 100 items that were owned and worn by Vivian Leigh, Clark Gable, Livy de Havilland, Leslie Howard, Butterfly McQueen, Selznick. I mean, we had a really extensive collection, and we had some beautiful wooden and glass cases throughout the hallways. And the home had the wide central hallways, like the old 4-on-4 plantation homes did, And it was a Georgian revival type house. And so people would come to the B&B, and I would give them a 2.5-hour tour of the museum. And then the evening, Fred would give them a 3.5-hour show and talk about the behind-the-scenes stories. And so that's how I learned.
So that was how captivated people, that they would do a 2.5-hour tour with you and then 3.5 hours with him.
It was truly, we wanted to give them, we spoil them rotten, and then give them a true Gone with the Wind experience. And we had a lot of people that would return, and we made a lot of good friends, really. People from all over the world came to our B&B in Barnesville, Georgia.
And it is still there, and after his death, you
It is no
sold it.
longer Tarleton Oaks. We sold it,
Okay.
and the woman completely changed the
Oh, it's
inside.
inside, okay.
It has nothing to do with Gone with the Wind anymore, just the fact that we used to live there.
Okay. Well, I hate that because there's a lot of memorabilia there. The interesting thing is, after Fred's death, you had the idea for the book when you owned the B&B.
Yes, we had a little gift shop, and of course, Fred signed autographs. We had a lot of movie stills and posters, a lot of Gone with the Wind type related items in the gift shop. And I thought, gosh, Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, that kind of had a cute ring to it. And I wanted it to have more than just recipes. I wanted it to have cast member information, scenes that were cut out of the movie, behind the scenes stories, autographs, some of our memorabilia from our museum. And so 15 years later, Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind, was born. So I guess after 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears, which is more years than any woman should have to go through labor, it's now affectionately known as the baby.
She will be signing copies of this coming Saturday at Southern Magnolia at the gift shop in the Casey Jones Village from 10 a.m. until 2:30. Terry will also be at the Orpheum coming up Friday night. When we come back, this book happened because of what some would say a chance meeting that wasn't a chance meeting in Kentucky.
Yes.
Right, in Kentucky. How do we get from Kentucky to Gone with the Wind and all that? Terry Lynn Crane is with us, and we're going to talk about that next as we continue. This is the Primetime Drive at News Talk 101.5 FM. We're back on the Primetime Drive at Jackson's News Talk 101.5. Thanks to the Star Center, we got everybody back together. And so our dog has been found in place.
Oh,
so,
it's
so
wonderful.
very good. So
Yay.
it's the magic of radio, magic to people that listen. Terry Lynn Crane is with us. And Terry Lynn is the author of Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. She'll be signing copies of this coming Saturday at Southern Magnolia Gift Shop at the Casey Jones Village here in Jackson from 10 a.m. until 2:30. She'll be at the Orpheum Friday evening. They are showing Gone with the Wind, and they have a lot of activities in conjunction with that. And Terry's one of the folks that is featured this coming Friday night, if you want to check into that, at the Orpheum in downtown Memphis. Her late husband, Fred Crane, she was married to Fred Crane the last 10 years of his life. He was one of the Tarleton twins in the all the way through this movie, Gone with the Wind, and it was a life changer. The thing is, after his death, Terry had the idea for this book, was working on this book, but you can't just go out and tie yourself in with Gone with the Wind.
No, you cannot.
Okay.
In fact, like I said, 15 years ago, I had the conception of
Right.
it, and then 15 years later, it was published.
Okay.
But 2 years it took to get the permissions from Gone with the Wind Partners, LLC.
Well,
and-
let's tell this story first.
Okay,
Because we haven't heard
and
this
Warner
story.
Brothers. Mhm.
All right. Terry is, Fred Crane has died. Terry's carrying on the idea of this book and
Yeah.
working on this book. And one day, you're in Kentucky.
Yes.
You're not in Georgia. You're in
No,
Kentucky.
I'm in Kentucky.
In Kentucky, okay.
Yes.
And what happens?
Well, my son had married, and so I was mailing him something there from in Danville, and I in the meantime, let me just tell you, I had been having dreams about Fred, and he would come to me in dreams and tell me things, and then this particular day, I heard his voice, and he said, "Terry, you need to go to the little antique store on Lexington Avenue." And I'm thinking, wow. I mean, it was
Right.
so strong. You've got to go now
Okay.
to the little antique store. I didn't need any antiques, Steve. It was like, gosh.
Right. Okay.
But, I stopped everything I was doing. I drove all the way across town to this little antique store. It wasn't very big,
Okay.
Didn't know what I was looking for. I was just there. Walked in, made the little round, came almost back to the front where they had the cashier.
Right.
And I looked down, and there's a basket of books. And the top book was kind of a coffee table book, and it was The Art of Gone with the Wind.
The Art of Gone with the Wind.
Yes, by Judy Cameron, who
Okay.
was a friend of Fred's.
Okay.
And in fact, I had that same book at my home in Georgia, but I didn't have it with me in Kentucky.
Okay.
So I said, gosh, I looked at the price. It was like $4.99. I said, I'll buy it. So I took it up to the front, laid it there. Now, there were two couples standing there at the cashier. They had just paid for their goods, getting ready to walk out the door. And when I laid that book up there, it caught the attention of a gentleman that was standing there. Well, the cashier said, "Oh, Gone with the Wind, that's my favorite movie." And I said, "Well, mine too." I said, "But I guess I'm kind of biased." I said, "My late husband was in the motion picture." Well, the man said, "Well, who was your husband?" And so I just randomly opened up the book, and there's a whole page of pictures of Fred. And so I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, here he is." And he goes, "Fred Crane. So you were married to Fred Crane?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Up until his death." And he said, "Oh my gosh, he was Brent Tarleton in the movie." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well," and he stuck his hand out and he said, "Well, I'm Deacon Steve Swope, and I'm the CEO and president of Gone with the Wind Partners, LLC. And we own all the literary rights to Gone with the Wind." He was only there for just a short time, getting ready to head to Noonan, Georgia, where he lived.
Okay. And so you meet him there.
I
and when
meet
you
him
say
there.
When she says deacon, that's not his first name. He is a deacon.
He's a deacon
in the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes, in Noonan, Georgia.
All right. Now, so you meet the person
Yes,
from
and-
who you would have to have permission to do any of
Yes,
this.
and of course, I didn't know who to get permission from. All I knew is that I'm working on a book, okay? Because that's what I was directed to do. I felt like this was what I needed to do. So anyway, I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I'm writing a book, and it's called Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind." And he said, "Well, in order to use the name Gone with the Wind, you have to get permission from the board of directors of Gone with the Wind Partners, LLC. And he said, "Well, here's my cell phone number, here's my email address, here's my other phone number at work, here's my attorney's name, number, and email address." He said, "Let's see what we can do." We shook hands. I said, "Well, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know, because I can talk at various things. If you have any Gone with the Wind events or whatever, I can be there to talk." Well, it was just like old home week. I'd never met the man before, but we became fast friends. And there you go. I couldn't believe it. I walked out the door thinking, wow, goosebumps.
Here it is, that moment. And that leads to the authorizations and things between that and Warner Brothers and what she needs to put this book together. Now, one other aspect of this, explain how the Roman Catholic Church came to be the ones that had
That owned the rights
to
the literary rights of Gone with the Wind. Well, of course, Margaret Mitchell was the authoress of Gone with the Wind. Now, when she died, her husband, John Marsh, became the owner. When John Marsh passed away just a few years later, then Stevens Mitchell, which is Margaret Mitchell's brother, who was an attorney, had the rights. Because see, Margaret Mitchell and John Marsh never had any children.
Okay.
So Stevens Mitchell died. His children got the rights. Well, when they died, they were all Catholic. They willed it to the Atlanta Archdiocese of the Catholic Church. So now the Archdiocese has formed a limited limited partnership. It's LLC. I guess that would be a limited partnership, right? GWTW LLC.
Okay.
And that's it. So isn't that amazing?
And so this deacon was the one that was in charge of them.
Yes.
In that store in Kentucky.
And that was in Kentucky. Is that crazy or what?
It's absolutely touched is what that is. The result of that, Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. Terry Lynn Crane will sign copies of this book this coming Saturday at the Southern Magnolia gift shop at the Casey Jones Village from 10 until 2:30. She is also featured in the showing of Gone with the Wind, the movie that will be done Friday night at the Orpheum in Memphis, and she will be part of some of the presentation leading up to that movie showing. You can also find out more about her at Terry Lynn Crane, CRANE.com, and you can get copies of the book there as well. We'll take a few minutes when we come back on the other side to talk about the content of this book as we continue. AP News is coming up next on the Primetime Drive at Jackson's News Talk 101.5. We're back on the Primetime Drive, News Talk 101.5 FM. We're talking with Terry Lynn Crane. She is the author of Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, A Taste of Gone with the Wind. She'll be signing copies of this at Southern Magnolia Gift Shop at the Casey Jones Village this coming Saturday from 10 a.m. until 2:30. She'll also be at the Orpheum Friday night for the showing of Gone with the Wind and will be part of the program that leads up to the showing of the movie at the Orpheum. Get details from the Orpheum on that event as well. It's been a real pleasure to have Terry with us.
Oh, thank you.
The book itself, you talk about that it's recipes, but then it's not.
Yeah, it's more than recipes,
Now,
absolutely.
one thing about the recipes, some of these go back. These are old recipes in some cases.
A lot of them are old recipes from the mid to late 1800s,
Okay.
and recipes that we used at our bed and breakfast, Charlton Oaks.
Okay. All right, so that content is there, and there's a variety of recipes. So those of you that follow that, but then the other aspect, the accent of this is
This is the main thing. Even though it's, quote, a recipe book, it's got information about the cast members, behind-the-scenes stories, scenes that were cut out of the movie. See, there were 2 hours cut from the film that no one ever sees, but we have all these photos. As I told you, Fred Parrish, who was the still photographer for Gone with the Wind, we have his photos from that. And also, it's got rare autographs, rare movie stills, some funny stories that happened and experiences. It's all intertwined with our experiences with our guests at Charlton Oaks. So it's really was a fun book to put together. It's just beautiful, colorful. I've got my own artwork in there as well as the movie stills, and it's truly, like I said, I feel like I birthed a baby because it's really, something that I've really have cherished, and it's so exciting for me when I see people's faces light up as they look through the book, and if they're Gone with the Wind fans or aficionados of the movie, they will love this book, and it makes great gifts too. I've had some people buy 6 and 8 books at a time to give away, as gifts and stuff.
You get more at Terry Lynn Crane, CRANE.com.
Terry with a Y, TERRY, LYNNCRANE.
TerryLynnCrane.com. This also, then, you do other things now as well, but you still speak a lot about this, and there's still great interest in this.
Yes, and of course, this is the 75th year, actually, December the 15th. 1939. So this past year was the 75th year. So this is the first whole year of 75 years.
Okay.
And of course, the same director that did Wizard of Oz was the director that Clark Gable wanted. He wanted his own director. So Victor Fleming directed Gone with the Wind. They fired George Cukor.
Okay.
And they brought in Victor Fleming because of Clark Gable.
Wow. Okay. So you speak about this, talk about
yes,
this.
Yes, I do. I go to in fact, if anybody wants to have me as a guest speaker, you can contact me on my website.
Okay.
And but I basically travel around to women's clubs, to theaters, to really anybody that has a group that they want to get together. I'm happy to talk to them and just have a great time.
On the 50th anniversary, when it comes back and Fred gets involved in this again.
1989.
How did he just... was he mystified at this phenomenon? It's almost like when you go by Graceland. I went by Graceland the other day. I happened to be in Memphis and just drove by, and it still amazes me that all these years later, people are still standing at that wall.
Yes, and I think the 50th anniversary was such a turning point because they came out with, of course, the big box set and the music on DVD and of course a cassette and whatever else album.
Because people obviously they're fans of this movie have seen it since they weren't around in that first generation.
And of course, it was a big reunion for Fred
for all the
to
actors.
see them all again and just kind of catch up on their respective lives after all these years. It was great fun.
Okay, what was he like?
Fred was a very, very, I would say very erudite man. He was very intelligent. He could speak 7 languages. Play the harmonica. He could play by ear. He was an artist. He could sketch, and he was really truly an artist because he could sketch from memory. Now I have to look at something and I could sketch it, but he could create from memory, and he could dance as well as Fred Astaire. And in fact, a month before he passed, he was the last man off the dance floor when we were in Marietta, Georgia, as the grand marshals of the 4th of July parade there. Mm-hmm.
When he looked back at it, you have those pivotal moments. How pivotal a moment then was that Gone with the Wind thing in his life? It wasn't obviously nowhere near the totality of his life.
Well, of course, he was an older gentleman by that time, because he was 20 when he played the part of Brent Tarleton. Okay. George Reeves was 24. Vivian Leigh was 25. So Vivian was older than all of them. And funny, talking about Butterfly McQueen, who played Prissy.
Right.
She was 27 years old playing the part of a 14-year-old.
Okay. Wow.
So it's really, and all the stories and all the things. Oh my gosh, there were just so many.
How did he describe the interaction with the cast and everything during?
Oh,
Did
gosh.
they have any? I guess there was a sense that this was a special movie. This was a huge project.
At first, well, the book had been out. It was published in 1936 and was already a huge success. In fact, even today, Gone with the Wind, the book, is second only to the Holy Bible in sales. Right. So you can imagine. Okay. So it was a huge project. But, everybody that was in it, really, Clark Gable didn't want to play the part. Right. The only reason he did is because he wanted a divorce from Maria Langham so he could marry Carol Lombard. And they gave him a nice check for it. Okay. But he had done a costume picture, Parnell, and it was kind of a flop. And he vowed right then he wasn't going to do another costume picture, from that period picture or whatever. But Selznick wanted Clark Gable. And he cajoled him to come on, So one of the things that he said, well, I want my own director then. So that's when Victor Fleming came on. And Leslie Howard, who was,
Ashley.
Yeah, Ashley Willis. Yeah. He did not want to play that part either.
Okay. And he died not long after that in World War II, right?
Yes, he was shot down as a spy. Okay. And they thought that Winston Churchill was on the plane. Okay. And I don't think the plane was ever found.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a.
I mean, all these.
Oh, there's so many different stories when you think, and of course I'll have to quote my late husband Fred, and he used to say, he'd get up and talk, and of course you have a limited amount of time to speak, right. And he said, well, talking just a brief time about Gone with the Wind is like putting the Mississippi River through a Coke bottle. So, Fred would.
But when he looked back on it, then it was a wonderful experience. Then.
Oh, yes, because he retired, okay? So, you've got, he had one career. Right. He in the movies and then in the television. And then broadcasting on radio, classical music, and he would do a lot of different parts, doing of course a lot like things that you do, Steve. As MCs and things like that. So he was very well known in Los Angeles, more as a broadcaster than anything else. Okay. So then when Turner did the 50th anniversary. Suddenly, there was a resurgence of interest in that movie, and people started asking for his autograph again, and of course, the black and white glossies started coming out, and he wanted his signature, and then the memorabilia came on, and then they started wanting him to speak at different events. He'd go on cruises and speak and do, doing their enrichment programs and things, and so as an older man, he began a new career.
The Tarleton twin that's still there.
There you go.
Amazing stuff. Terry Lynn Crane, award-winning poet, gifted artist, singer-songwriter, many things in her life, has put together Fiddle Dee Dee Recipes, a taste of Gone with the Wind. She'll be signing copies of this coming Saturday at Southern Magnolia in the Casey Jones Village from 10 a.m. till 2:30, and she will be at the Orpheum Friday night for the showing of Gone with the Wind, and she'll be part of the preview program, and there'll be copies of the book available there. It's been an absolute delight.
Steve, thank you for having me. It has been so much fun. Absolutely. And, we'll keep in touch.
We will stay in touch. Terry, TerryLynnCrane.com. This is the Primetime Drive at News Talk 101.5 FM.